great meeting.
At what point do you become honorary members or official members? I mean, I think this is 5 or 6 straight weeks. We're honored to have
This is
you.
your decision, Graham, your decision.
Approved.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Other guests here on the call?
Yeah, Jester Jersey from Davis Kiwanis Club, California. Pleased to be here again. This is about the 4th or 5th now that I've been here. So thank you for having me.
Outstanding. Anyone else? Okay, let's get started. I want to first thank you to our July Zoom meeting sponsor, Greg Silver, who has asked me to introduce him as environmental leader, attorney, Butler Bulldog, and supporter of Black Lives Matter. And I'm sure there's a number of other subtitles there, but those are the 4 Greg asked me to speak. But on a serious note, really want to thank him. And if you have an interest in sponsoring future meetings, please let Taylor know. We have postponed all new member dues through October 1st. And again, all in-person club meetings have been canceled through September 10th. We continue to monitor that situation and want to make the best decision possible. If you want to join our club meeting, I believe, Taylor will correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's July 21st. If you want to join and listen in on the discussion, you are more than welcome to. Our social co-chairs, Roger Cummings and Wendy Paddock, have determined that we're going to have to wait until September to attempt to host a club social. And that's because the reduced restaurant capacity and inability to make reservations without a food and beverage minimum is a big hurdle right now that we're facing. If you want to get together on your own, you are more than welcome to do that. Just a reminder to wear a mask per the mandate that we've got going on right now. One of the neat things, and want to credit Taylor and Tina, we're going to be doing a socially distant project that was mentioned in our newsletter, and I mentioned it yesterday, but we are going to be writing notes of encouragement to our sponsored Service Leadership Club. I think it's a great opportunity. As you can imagine, it's a very challenging time for everyone, but particularly young people. And it'd be great for us all to send them notes of encouragement. So there's a Google link that you can sign up, or please let Taylor know if you're interested. We hope you will consider giving to our foundation. I've only got 2 months left in my presidency. I know that's welcome news to a couple of you, but we only have about $12,000 remaining in our goal. And I'd love to retire as your president, having reached that goal. So as a fundraiser, I'll really not have shown my worth if we can't get to that goal here. But please consider helping us, and you may consider, in lieu of lunch, paying back to the foundation. Okay, a few more announcements before we get going. I'm going to turn it over to Mary Marsh, who's a dear friend of mine. I hope that's reciprocal, Mary. She's going to share information about the importance of our Kiwanis Cornerstone Society. So Mary, it's all yours.
Okay, yes, I do consider you a good friend, Graham. Even though we're not having a Butler basketball season, I don't hold you responsible. So we'll get back on track. For those of you who are guests and maybe new members, our Cornerstone Society is members who have named our foundation for a planned giving gift, either in their will or by other means. And the importance of it is significant because our foundation is really the reason we've been able to operate on the level we've been able to maintain for many, many years. It allows us to make the grants that we make that enrich our community and support our mission to help children in our communities. And it allows us to move forward in times like this when we really aren't meeting and gathering in money or doing any fundraising. It is really the foundation of our club, I believe. And for me, the importance is as president many years ago and throughout the years, I've recognized how valuable it has been to our club. And I'm hopeful that it will live in perpetuity. And the way that it can do that is if it has more funds that will survive many generations and many iterations of the club. So I fully support planned giving to make our foundation more healthy. It is healthy now, but it will be even more healthy if we think about it in our future plans. And I think a lot of us, I come from the estate tax and estate planning area of the law, and I think many of us are reluctant to go to the trouble to make a will or a codicil to a will or change something. But it is so easy to look at one's insurance policies. And I just say this because this is how I have made my planned gift. An insurance policy that really isn't necessary for my kids' well-being anymore, but it's still in place. And you can just call your agent and have them send you a change of beneficiary form. And you can make 1/5 payable to the foundation, or half, or 1/10, whatever you want to do. And that is a planned gift. It will happen upon your death, and it will help support the foundation even when you're gone. So I really recommend that those of us are at senior ages look at your insurance policies if you aren't already a member of the Cornerstone Society, and think if you might be able to do that with a portion of any policy that you might have. But think of the foundation, because it has really been our greatest asset over the years as far as being able to carry out our mission. So thank you.
Thank you, Mary. You've been a great role model to me as president and a great friend, and appreciate you sharing the importance of planned giving. I've worked on those type of gifts for about 10 years in my time at Butler, and one of the more awkward exchanges I had once was a prospective donor who said, "Are you telling me I'm going to die at some point?" And I had to affirm that. But a great way to give, and again, appreciate what you do and all those who have participated in our Cornerstone Society program. At this time, I am also really proud to talk about a grant that we are giving to the Starfish Initiative. The 2020 Back to School Kickoff, expanding capacity to serve an additional 125 Starfish scholars for the 2020-2021 school year, expanding resource recess to include 6 resource organizations, 5 nonprofit organizations, 8 volunteer organizations, and a keynote speaker. This component will make the Back to School Kickoff a critical component of the core essentials of the Starfish model: college readiness and success, career exploration, and character development. And I'm gonna now, I wish I had the check to hand to you. It's hard to do that virtually, but we are granting $2,500 to Jennifer and the Starfish Initiative. And Jennifer, if you'd like to say a few words about this, we'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. And we certainly at Starfish appreciate Kiwanis Club of Indianapolis support actually over the last several back to school kickoff events, serving our students who are 21st century scholarship eligible students here within Marion County. This year has been a very interesting year for all of us, as we all know. And so the importance of the back to school kickoff and the resources that we will provide on this year, August 8th, are greatly needed. And not having those would be a detriment to the young people that we serve. There is a shift in the delivery of the back to school kickoff this year, as we will provide the kickoff in a virtual format. We will be using a platform called Hop-In, which will provide us a simulated version of what the in-person event would look like. So there'll be a main stage where there will be the welcome, the keynote address, the opportunities for scholars and mentors and parents to break out into those sessions where they will receive literature and information and resources in terms of financial literacy, grade-specific information as they are entering their high school year this fall. They will also receive additional information to make sure they're on track to meet those 21st century scholarship requirements. As an addition in terms of the resource aspect, we will make sure that as part of the 21st century scholarship requirements, that we have other not-for-profit agencies there in the space where our students have the opportunity to serve others, which is often one of the things that they appreciate most, being on the end as the giver of service and time, as opposed to being on the end of as the receiver. And so we are excited to be able to deliver that to them this year. Last year's event was an in-person event at Arsenal Tech, and we had great support from Kiwanis, PNC, Staples, and Anthem, which helped to get those young people off to a great start of the year. And just as some additional information so that you kind of know some of the things that have happened with Starfish in the last 10 months or so. We do have a new president and CEO. Her name is Kimberly Bostic, and Kim comes to us from the United Way. She's also spent time with UNCF and other not-for-profit organizations here in the city. She has a great passion for serving young people and helping them reach their fullest potential. As I indicated earlier, we have a new development director, Jordan Coleman. Jordan comes to us from corporate environment, Geico, where she was a part of that team's corporate responsibility group, which made investments in the community and who they would serve. And so we are very, very fortunate to have her. We are very thankful for this award. It is going to do great work for us as we move these young people into their rising freshman year. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Jennifer.
I'd be
Thanks
happy
for
to answer any questions that you have.
thank you, Jennifer. Appreciate all the good work you're doing, and I'll rely on Taylor, but suffice to say the check's in the mail. I'm now going to turn it over to our presenter today. We're honored to have Matt Taylor, and we'll share just a little bit about his background. But first, before I do, I want to thank the Colts. As you know, the Colts have been a tremendous partner to Kiwanis in terms of allowing us to use their practice facility for our football banquet. And it's just been that's a wonderful program, but has been enhanced by the venue that they allow us. Mr. Irsay is still a Kiwanis member, so we're proud to claim him. And a little bit about Matt. He's heading into his 9th season with the Colts. He oversees all of the Colts audio and radio content, manages the Colts radio network, and has hosted Colts TV shows, preseason TV, play-by-play, and also served as a radio sideline reporter. He's also done play-by-play for the Indiana High School Athletic Association Championship. And he was a full-time producer, host at 1070 The Fan. Maybe he can patch up the beef Dan Dockich has with me, but that's probably for another program. So Matt, we are honored to have you. Look forward to hearing about the Colts prospects and the most interesting aspects we're in right now in terms of planning for a season.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. It's really cool for me to be here. So appreciate the hospitality and great introduction. A little bit too flattering there, but like I said, it's awesome to be here, and it's certainly challenging times for all of us. But as sports try to get back on track, it's a whole bunch of what ifs and how is this going to go, and a lot of hypotheticals right now. So we're trying to sort through that and put a game plan in place. I'll certainly open it up for questions later on, but you know, I hope you don't get frustrated by not sure yet, or I don't know yet, or we're trying to wait and see, because that's kind of the phase we're in. But a little bit more about me. You know, I'm heading into my 3rd year as voice of the Colts. I grew up on the south side of Indianapolis, Hoosier through and through. Love the city, love Indianapolis. Graduated from Ron Colley High School way back in 2004. Played football, basketball, and baseball there. Continued my athletic career in football. I played football in college at Franklin College, Franklin, Indiana. Had a really good from a team perspective, we had a really good career. I had a decent career myself, 3-year starter, captain my senior year. But what I loved about Franklin was obviously a great education, but some really good hands-on opportunities to get great experience through the campus radio station. Small school, about 1,200 kids. So just a perfect opportunity to really kind of, integrate myself and get down and dirty with a lot of hands-on experience and a ton of opportunities that a small school will allow you. I was blessed at a very early age to, know what I wanted to do. When I was 10 years old, I had a pretty good idea of what, my dream job was, what I saw for myself in terms of a career. I was the kid that I would sneak a transistor radio into my bedroom and try to stay up late and listen to Monday Night Football with my parents not knowing. I love to listen to sports more than watch sports, because I love to listen to guys, the great ones, describe the action on the field, because it allowed me to use my imagination. My imagination would take over based on, the descriptions, the sights, or I should say in this case, the sounds and the background of the game, the ambiance. And for me, imagination has always been a big part of who I am. I've always had, like I said, big ideas and big dreams. I was just that kid that loved to play sports, and I like the concept of telling stories through sports and through the radio. Those things kind of just combined to make the perfect venue for me in terms of what I saw for myself growing up. So at a very early age, I started to pay attention to how a game should be called. And I took notice to, what a good broadcast sounded like. So again, from a very early age, it was listening as much as I could. IU games with Don Fisher, Purdue games with Joe McConnell, who did football, who's just so good. The Pacers with Mark Boyle, the Colts with Bob Lamey. It became pretty clear that I wanted to be a part of, major sports on the radio calling games. So I think going to a small school like Franklin served me pretty well. Nothing against, the bigger schools like IU or Ball State, but sometimes in those programs, you have to kind of wait your turn as an upperclassman to get behind the mic and to, call games and get some of the experiences that I had, as a freshman, my first couple of weeks on campus. So to me, it didn't matter that I was calling Division III games at Franklin and not Division I games. It just mattered that I was getting experience. I was getting, time behind the mic and making mistakes. I traveled with the basketball team for 4 years, girls basketball team as well. I traveled and did all the baseball games. I just wanted to do as many games as possible to kind of perfect my craft and get better each time out. So, you go back and you listen to those. I still have them. I still have my tapes when I was, 19, 20 years old, and they're rough. You go back and listen to them. They're pretty choppy. But I like to think I got better every single time out. You learn how to prepare for games, and then you prepare to prepare for games. So that's the biggest thing. You get better each time out. After college, I thought I was, decent behind the mic and, had some skills. I thought I was going to be the next Bob Costas within a year, going to the Olympics and doing all that. Obviously that did not happen. It was an uphill battle. The ultimate goal was to call games on a professional level, but I quickly realized, you got to pay your dues along the way, and you got to be able to accept the grunt work and climb the ladder in due time, which is not foreign to obviously other lines of work. So I had a lot of part-time jobs right out of college. I called IU volleyball games for the IU website, and I did a lot of Olympic sports down in Bloomington. I worked at a country music station in Newcastle, Indiana. And I'll tell you right now that I hate country music, but it was a job. And so it was a chance to get behind the mic, and, somebody was going to pay me to do it. But you better believe, between, 4 and 8 p.m. on Saturdays and Sundays, I knew everything there was to know about country music. That's kind of the way I am. I kind of immerse myself in what I'm doing. Then I got a job at MS Communications downtown Indianapolis, and that was as part-time can be. I was hired to, my first job was to answer phone calls for Bob Lovell's show, which is a high school basketball and football wrap-up show on Fridays and Saturday nights. It's from 9:30 to midnight. And my job was to answer phones of people calling in, reporting scores. And then I would compile a list and give that to the producer. So again, very, very basic. I'm sure they pulled my name off a stack of resumes. But I was jumping for joy to get my foot in the door. And that's really what it's all about, because within a few weeks, I was able to kind of show my versatility and prove that I was just more than just a warm body that can answer a phone. Soon after that, I was producing the show. I even filled in hosting the show. And then I started producing shows on other stations within the cluster at Emmis. Started working for the IHSAA because of the partnership Emmis had with them as the play-by-play guy. So I was there for 4 years and did a lot of really cool things. Then in the summer of 2012, I got a call from the Colts, and they said, hey, we're noticing your work. We like your work. Would you want to come over here and possibly take over our radio production needs, handle our radio network, all of those things kind of behind the scenes that we need done. So, of course, for me, I jumped at that chance because I knew then how things kind of worked. The Colts owned their own broadcast rights. They handled all the broadcast production in-house. They decided who the broadcasters were. So this was a chance for me to kind of, again, get my foot in the door, show what I could do, improve my versatility, do good work on the air. And then you kind of fast forward here 8 or 9 years. And, it's just kind of you want to be able to put yourself in the best position possible to be in line for bigger and better things. And, someone said a while back ago, I'm the youngest play-by-play guy in the NFL. There's only 31 other guys in the world that have my job. So I get to talk about football. I get to call games. I get to talk about the Colts for a living. So it's an absolute dream job. It's a dream come true. I don't take it for granted because, I live in the market that I grew up in. I get to work and call games for the team that I grew up, following and rooting for. But, that being said, it didn't come without hard work. It didn't come without dedication. You have to put in your time. I had to take on some, non-glamorous jobs to get there, but you have to think that nothing's beneath you as you work your way up. So I just tried to treat everything I did along the way like someone was watching or someone was listening, paying attention, and treat everything like it was the Super Bowl, because it was my Super Bowl. I think ultimately, if you put in the work, you put in the time to get better, no matter what you do, those seemingly thankless jobs or those grunt work jobs, responsibilities, they turn into chances to do what I'm doing right now, call NFL games to thousands of people, across central Indiana and around the country. So that is a little about me and kind of my story and how I've, moved up the chain, I guess you would say, within the Colts organization. But I know you guys probably have a ton of questions, so feel free to fire away. Anything that you guys want to know about the Colts or the team or the upcoming season or my job, I would love to kind of leave some time to get into some discussion on anything you guys have that's on your mind.
Hello, this is Greg Silver. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I had a question about how Black Lives Matters is going to affect the team or is affecting the team. Is there a unified feeling about the issues and about how working together will make a better team and make a better psychological team working together as Americans? Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a great question. And this entire off season has been virtual. Obviously, there hasn't been any on the field activities. And so, you're looking at about 9 or 10 weeks that you would have had in the spring, in the months of April, May, and June, OTAs, conditioning, things like that. All of that was done virtually. And the pattern or the schedule for the virtual preparation in the spring was, 4 or 5 hours a day between Monday and Thursday. Guys would have Fridays off. But obviously, around Memorial Day weekend, everything in our country kind of, it was a big domino effect with the whole George Floyd situation. And I think there's going to be some positives that come from this, just with a bigger discussion. And
You know, the few weeks after everything happened, you know, Frank Reich and Chris Ballard, they pretty much scrapped those 4 or 5 hours a day with the team doing X's and O's and meeting and talking about workouts and sharing screens and drawing up plays via Zoom virtual. They just got the team together doing what we're doing right now, 90 guys together on a Zoom call, and they just talked through the issues, and guys were able to bring up their circumstances, share their stories. And for a lot of guys, they were listening, which was great. And then for others, it was a chance for them to tell their stories and get some things off their chest, which is great. And the way that Frank Reich recapped those weeks it was powerful. And we all learned something. And we all started to gain a bigger appreciation for one another. And, you know, we're never going to fully understand each other because we can't walk a mile in each other's shoes. But if we just listen and we talk, we can have a better understanding. Listen, you're talking about a melting pot of backgrounds and a 90-man roster in the NFL. That's a ton of different backgrounds and social economic experiences. So it was just great for, you know, to kind of put football aside and talk about something bigger and better. And also, too, we had to talk to a handful of guys after that, and they said, I was always going to fight for my teammates no matter what. Like, I've got their back on the field. I'm going to do whatever I can between the white lines to support them. But I think it's even better now. I think it's even that bond is even stronger now because we had this team meeting to go over the issues and to talk through some things. So I think, again, just a horrible situation, but maybe, you know, the spotlight is put on all of us now to do better, to think better, and to act better, and to, you know, build some unity. And I think you're going to have that within this Colts team because of the culture and the atmosphere that Frank Reich, the head coach, and Chris Ballard, the GM, has put in place, where everybody has a voice, and it's kind of like a family. If one guy has a problem, we all have a problem, and we need to figure out how to fix that. So it was very, very encouraging and very, very positive the way the Colts kind of came together and continue to come together, you know, after the events up in Minnesota.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Matt, we've got a question in the chat. Besides filling the role of Bob Lamey, one of the best, what has been your biggest challenge to get up to speed?
Well, I mean, obviously the challenge was in 2018, you know, everything kind of happened so fast with Bob's retirement. You know, that particular year I was under the interim role. And so what that meant for me was we just didn't have enough time to really adjust and put a full plan in place together. So I was essentially doing 2 full-time jobs, you know, for 6 months between the months of August and January when we got done playing our last game in the playoffs. So from a personal standpoint, it was very, very hectic. And I'll just be completely honest with you, very, very stressful because all those things behind the scenes I was still in charge of and still am. But since then, we've hired someone under me to kind of take the load off. But back then, we just didn't have enough time to get someone up to speed full time. I mean, it was kind of counterproductive to have someone come in. And I mean, once the regular season starts, it's just go, 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 as you guys can kind of imagine. So there wasn't a whole lot of time to get someone in and go through an orientation, get them up to speed. It was just easier for me to do it. And kind of, like I said, take on 2 full-time jobs during that time span. So what I would do is I would go to work, and my office hours were spent on doing what I was doing. I would come home, and, you know, I got a wife and kids, so I would spend some time with them. We would do dinner, we would do bedtime, put the little one to bed, and then around, you know, 7:30, 8 o'clock back then, I would go right back to work, and I would do my game day prep, start on my game day prep, what I needed to do play-by-play wise. So, you know, I would start around 7:30 or 8 and get done, you know, 11:30, midnight. And I did that every day, 6 days a week for 5.5, 6 months. So it was very, very stressful. And you're also thinking like, am I doing a good enough job? Checking in with the higher ups. Am I appeasing them? Because what I didn't want to do, obviously, just being very frank with you all, is, it was a very public position. It's a very public situation. At the end of the day, I was up for a promotion, a big time promotion. And had I not gotten that promotion, everyone in the city would have known. So there was a lot of pressure internally on me to do a good job, to do the best I can. But there was also a lot of, internal thinking like, do I need to be doing something else? Should I focus on this and not that? So there was, I don't know what point in the season it was in 2018, maybe halfway through. I can't remember, but it was just, I'm going to start living in faith and not fear, not worrying about, what's going to happen, because if this is meant to be, it's going to happen. So, from a mental standpoint, I just kind of focused on my job and my skills. I knew I was good enough for it. I knew I had, the work ethic and all the things that needed to go into the job to make the job run smoothly. So everything worked out. But I would say 2018 was a big time challenge personally, because of just everything that I was going through internally at work, doing 2 full-time jobs, and then the stress of just not knowing until the season was over, kind of what my fate was.
Thanks for sharing that, Matt. I think it speaks a lot to your character of getting through that time. We have a few more questions here in the chat. What NFL Colts rivalries get you excited to announce?
Yeah, that's a great question. Obviously, the first one that comes to my mind are the Houston Texans. The Texans have been, obviously, they're an AFC South team, so they're a division rival. They have won the AFC South 4 out of the last 5 years. And, you look at all the different components that you need to have to be, successful over a long, sustained period of time. And it's Deshaun Watson at quarterback. It's a great defense. They've got a pretty good head coach in Bill O'Brien. Some really good pieces on defense like J.J. Watt and Whitney Merciless, and I can kind of go on and on and on. But they have been the biggest roadblock for the Colts. The Colts have not won a division since 2014. So the Texans have been, the biggest roadblock for the Colts in terms of getting to the playoffs, hosting home playoff games, and advancing. That's something the Colts have to do a better job of, is getting off to better starts to put themselves in a position where late in the season, these head-to-head matchups against AFC South teams, just aren't these colossal, meaningful games in terms of, if you lose, you really don't have a good shot at making the postseason from a percentage standpoint. So, the Colts, we can talk on and on and on here about, they in recent past have gotten off to poor starts. They haven't won a regular season opener in week 1 since 2013. Looking at the schedule this year, it's a little bit favorable, where 5 of your first 6 games are against teams that did not make the playoffs last year, that had under 500 records. And with the way this team is put together this year, it might be the best constructed roster the Colts have had since I've been working with the team since 2012. I mean, there's not a lot of holes. In fact, I don't think there is a hole on this team. You might say there's, position groups that are deeper than others, obviously, but there's not a glaring weakness where you say, yeah, but this area can get us beat on a particular Sunday. The Colts have a lot of depth, and that's a testament to Chris Ballard. So I think getting off to a good start and beating Houston, that is key this year for the Colts, because they have been the biggest rival inside the division.
Yeah, I like that rivalry because it's respectful on both sides. And Matt can't comment, but you don't have to worry about the footballs being deflated when you play down there. Another question is, Matt, how do you prepare for a game? How do you take us through perhaps the week prior in terms of your preparation?
Yeah, I'll give you the Cliff Notes version of my prep, because it's very, very I could bore you all day with my prep, because that's really my thing. Prep is like, if someone described Matt Taylor's broadcast style or like his hallmark, it's prep. I like to think no one's going to outwork me. No one's going to be more prepared for a game than I do. And I really subscribe to the old cliche, that old saying that Vince Lombardi had, that he said was, failure to prepare is preparing to fail. And that definitely is in line with my job. The way I look at my process is I'm just like a player in the sense of I got to grind, Monday through Saturday. And then if I'm ready to go, the game should be easy. The game should come easy to me if I'm ready to go. The game happens so fast. The movement on the field happens so quickly. If you're not ready, and if you're not ready, if you're not prepared, the game will swallow you up and you will feel like you're swimming and drowning the entire time. So my preparation is pretty extensive. Just to give you a quick version of it, for a preseason game, you've got 90 guys on both squads. So that's 180 players that could potentially play in the game. So what I will do this time of year, and I've been working on it since May, I will make a player profile for every single guy that could potentially be in the game. And that includes the starting quarterback and the third string right guard. So that if that guy is in the game and he's part of the game and he makes a big impact, I'm able to look back through my notes or look at my file on my computer, look that guy up, and I've got information that's pertinent to that guy on that day. So that's the really big picture. Look at my player profiles, and then within that, I will make kind of like a starting lineup sheet that has a Cliff Note version of my player profiles on my computer, but I'll have like 3 bullet points on each player in the starting lineup. And those 3 bullet points, again, are what is most important about that guy on that particular Sunday. Is he close to breaking a record? Is he high up in NFL standings in a particular category? What did he do the last couple of games? That kind of thing shows up on that starting lineup sheet. I'll have the same thing for defensive guys as well. I'll do an offensive individual stat sheet for the entire team, a defensive individual stat sheet for the entire team, and I've got a working document called like team notes. And for every category within the game, I will break down trends and research trends. So like passing yards the last couple of games, I'll break it down and I'll have that in a particular section. So when it's applicable for me during the game to talk about passing yards, I go to that section and it tells me right then and there. But really for me, it's all about memorizing and researching and organizing all week long. That's really what I do. I incessantly read a lot of stuff. And my brain is always churning. What can I do? What can I research more that'll help me give me an edge for the game on Sunday. And so between, you play the game on Sunday, between Monday morning and Saturday night, if you're a starter on both teams or like a big time contributor, a guy that rotates in like a backup running back or a backup tight end or a backup defensive end, somebody like that. I will know off the top of my head, I will know your name, your number, how many years you've been in the NFL, and what college you went to right off the top of my head. And again, it's like studying for a final. If you're ready to go and you've studied for the test should be easy. And the test every week for me is Sunday. The hard part though is you got a new team every single week. So you're just kind of scrapping all that work and doing it all over again. So it's like Groundhog's Week in the NFL. You do that, 20 times, including the preseason. So long story short, prep is huge for me. And I like to think nobody's going to outwork me. And, I like to think that during the course of our games, we give the listener some nuggets, some information they're not going to get anywhere else. But that being said, I over prepare, and a good rule of thumb is, like you have 100% of your prep that I just talked about that you do all week long. The good rule of thumb is, and it's kind of demoralizing when you think about it, but like you use 10% of 100% of your prep. The game dictates, which information on players on the team you relay during the game. So going in, you just don't know what that 10% of 100% of your prep is going to be. But it's a great deal of fun. Like I said, it beats working. It beats having a real job. At the end of the day, again, like I said, I get to research sports, talk football for a living, and get paid to do it. So it's awesome. Any other questions? I see one here that says, what do I do to unwind? Yeah, there's two different speeds to my job. Obviously, there's in season Matt Taylor, and then there's out of season Matt Taylor. I'm pretty busy both scenarios, but obviously one's a little bit more intense than the other. But like I said, my brain really doesn't shut off during the season. But once I get out of season, I'm just kind of like a normal guy. I mean, I've got a family and 2 kids and live on the south side of Indianapolis. Love to just, I'm pretty simple. I mean, I just go out back on the deck and listen to music, chill out. And that's really it. I mean, I'm just very much a basic average guy. There's nothing to me really.
Matt, this is Greg Silver again. May I ask you, first of all, you do prepare for success. I can see that. Can you hear me all right? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
I wanted to know how the Colts are dealing with the concussion settlement and protocol. Have you noticed changes since that settlement occurred in Philadelphia and the issue of safety for the players?
That's a good question. I'm not privy to everything that's going on. I know obviously that's a huge issue. Player safety is at the forefront of everything. And I know every year new helmets get developed and technology continues to develop, and the Colts and the NFL adapt that new technology. Like if I go back and look at, just from an eyeball test, somebody like me even can go back and look at the helmets they were using 2-3 years ago. They're not the same helmets. There's some subtle changes within the helmets, and that's all designed to limit concussions, limit head injuries, and things like that. And, you go 10, 15 years ago, I mean, even then, guys weren't, they weren't raising their hand on their own saying, I've got some symptoms, because they didn't want to get Wally Pitts, right? They didn't want to take themselves out of the lineup in fear that they're not going to get back in, because the line of guys wanting to get on the field and take their jobs is very, very vast. But now you've got guys that are more educated, that understand, the serious long-term implications of head injuries. It's no longer a stigma to kind of raise your hand and take yourself out of the lineup, where I think, 15, 20 years ago, people would have been saying, oh, this guy's not very tough, and, look at him, he's going out of the game. So I think we've evolved a lot in terms of that over the last decade or so.
Thank you.
Matt, I was muted earlier. Hopefully you can hear me now.
Yes, sir.
We did have a predictable question about this coming fall, and you kind of previewed your response, but your thoughts on having spectators at games, and we're obviously getting pretty close to the season started. So any thoughts that you can share there?
Yeah, like I said, this is going into it's a wait and see part of the lecture that I prefaced. But everything right now is very, very fluid. I think the luxury that the NFL has is they can kind of watch and see how the bubble works in the NBA, how Major League Baseball adapts to all this. I know the Colts would certainly love to have fans in there if they can, if it makes sense from a health standpoint in relation to the guidelines from the local government, things like that. I mean, there's nothing the Colts want more than to, open up the stadium and have as many fans in there as possible. I just don't know if that's possible right now. I saw a couple of teams have released, somewhere between 14 and 15,000 people. I think it, remains to be seen if the Colts can kind of move in line with that line of thinking. It's just really a mess right now, to be honest with you. And it's nobody's fault. Everybody's just kind of taking this in stride because there's no playbook for it. But, I think we're all doing our best to ensure that we have at least some football. And if that means playing in front of no fans or, 20% capacity, whatever it is, we're all for that, so long as we get football on the field and then thus, consequently getting games on TV, because we know how much the TV revenue is important to the health of the league this year, when you're going to be losing out on so much other revenue in other places because of COVID. So that's really the best answer I can give right now. And I know it's not an adequate one, but I just apologize for all the uncertainty here at the moment.
If it makes you feel any better, I'm getting peppered with, will Butler basketball happen as well? And I've been giving a similar response.
Yeah.
Got a couple more questions for you, a couple interesting questions. Do you have a favorite football movie? And do you play fantasy football, and have any advice for those of us?
Oh man, my favorite football movie. I'd have to think on that. That is a good question. There's nothing that immediately pops in my mind. My favorite baseball movie, then that's a different story. There's a lot of good baseball movies to choose from. I used to play fantasy football, but you'd be shocked at how bad I was at fantasy football. Everybody thinks because I work for the NFL and I study all this stuff that I'm going to be like a fantasy football wizard, but it's just as a big of a crapshoot for me as it is for most people. So I can't give you too much help on your fantasy lineup. In fact, the rules have changed the last couple of years to the point where they deem fantasy football, they being the NFL, they deem fantasy football as a form of gambling. And I am not allowed to gamble as an employee of the NFL. So I haven't had to worry about fantasy football for the last couple of years anyway. So I'm kind of out of touch on that.
And if you're like me, that's probably good for your marriage. It almost cost mine about a decade ago.
I would not be a good gambler anyway. So yeah, cross that off the board.
Another interesting question. Matt, you seem so articulate. Is there ever a time when your mouth freezes up or you're just kind of stuck in terms of what you're trying to say?
Absolutely. All the time. Every game I have a moment like that. And I'm very, very hard on myself. I mean, I'm sure like a lot of us, I'm my biggest critic. And I'll go back and I'll listen to every game from start to finish. And I'll say, you should not have done that there. Here you could have done this. And I think that's just how you get better. I mean, just like players and coaches, they watch film. I'll go back and listen to the game. I mean, if you don't, I think you're doing yourself a huge disservice like that. And, there's at least once per game where, yeah, your brain will move faster than your mouth. And, I like to think it doesn't happen. It's not as egregious as it used to be. But at the end of the day, you are literally watching, reacting, and saying, and you've got people in your ear. I got a sideline reporter on the field telling me things as I'm talking. I'm trying to incorporate my color guy while I'm talking and setting him, I'm setting him up as best I possibly can. I've got a stat guy in my ear, giving me information. I've got engineers behind me telling me things from a tech standpoint. I got a producer telling me when to break. So it's like playing a big game of chess in your head. Like you're the executive producer by default, and you're trying to balance all those things at once. At the same time, you're trying to do your job. And like I said, describe the action eloquently, give good description, paint a good picture, use good, vivid imagery, things like that. And sometimes the magnitude of the game or the situation of the game, plus everybody kind of talking to you at once, you get a little bit tongue-tied and you start thinking, what am I hearing? I'm hearing all these things all at once. And I like to think if you've listened to a game and there's a little bit of a pause, a pregnant pause, that's what I'm doing, is playing a little bit of a game of chess in my head, trying to sort out all the information and then prioritize that accordingly. So there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that goes on because of all the different, and all the other people involved and all the different layers that they have job wise trying to give to me. I always joke with our sideline reporter. I always say, your job is to help me because I am 7 stories up away from the field. You're 6 feet away on the sideline. There's going to be some things that you see that I don't. You're going to be able to see stuff quicker than I do. So if you see it, obviously you tell me, but also understand that if you tell me, I'm going to assume you're right. And if you're wrong, I'm wrong and everybody's wrong. So we always operate under the rule of, if you don't know, don't say, because we'll figure it out later.
I've got a couple questions for you. First one, the Andrew Luck situation last summer, I have to imagine would be very challenging in terms of you've maybe prepared for a long time thinking he was coming back, or the possibility he was strong that he was coming back, and then decides to retire, and would ask how that affected your preparation for last year. And then the second question, a bit different. we had an unfortunate situation this week in the NFL, with the player for the Philadelphia Eagles and comments he made via social media. How did the Colts balance freedom of speech with, talking to the players about, your words also impact the reputation of our organization?
Yeah, I'll pick that one up first. I mean, I think you just kind of answered the question in terms of how the Colts feel. They very much want guys to have their own platform. They want them to be their own brand, so to speak. Our public relations department, our communications department does such a good job of outlining what the expectations are for players, because guys are talking to the media every day, and everybody can talk to everybody through Twitter and Instagram and social media. That's the world that we live in right now. But the onus from our PR staff is always never lie. Always tell the truth, because if you're not transparent, or you're hiding things, or you're just flat out lying, it's always going to come back to haunt you. But we always want football, and even football related as well. But you also have to understand that there's things that go along with that. And the Colts support guys in those feelings. But, Deshaun Jackson, I think, I can't speak to him, and I can't speak to the Eagles organization, but that was pretty eye-opening. And I know the Colts obviously would take a very, very similar stance, just as the Eagles did, if one of their players was that vocal and that egregious through social media. Andrew Luck, yeah, there's no playbook for that. Just like there's no playbook for this, what we're dealing with right now in COVID, there was no playbook for that. Just a very, very unique and unfortunate set of circumstances kind of led him to that path. And I never thought he was coming back. Like, once he retired, there was never part of me that said, oh, I'm going to hold out hope that he's going to come back. And I still don't hold out hope. And I say that because I know Andrew Luck. I was around him for a long time. And the way he comes across, through the media, he, as genuine as he appears to be to all of you, that's him in real life as well. And so I knew that about him. So that night, just to give you a little bit of a glimpse behind that night from my perspective, obviously did not know it was happening. We played the Bears in week 3 of the preseason last year. The news of that broke in the middle of the game. And again, it's a preseason game. So I'm just as prepared for a preseason game as I would be for the Super Bowl. But, I'm checking my phone during a timeout just like everybody else. I get a notification on my phone from Adam Schefter, a guy with 7 million Twitter followers. And, it says Andrew Luck's going to retire. And, my mouth hits the floor. I'm completely shocked. I do a double take, like I'm making sure my phone hasn't been hacked, or it's not like a fake account of Adam Schefter. Like, I'm double checking, triple checking that that this is real, this is happening. I double check with our PR staff. Like, I did everything I possibly could do before, I basically reported the news. And that happened in the middle of the third quarter of that game. And really, like, mentally, like, my mind was not – like, I was calling the game, and I guess I was, like, going through the motions and going through the process of calling the game. But in my mind, I'm like, the third string tight end for the Bears that just caught that pass, he does not matter right now, okay? He does not matter. Like, in my mind, he is not of importance. So we were, I think at that point, I think it's human nature. Like, if you're out to dinner, and you're not tuned into the game, and you get a notification on your phone just like everybody else, or somebody calls you, say, hey, have you heard about this Andrew Luck situation? What's the first thing you're going to do? You're going to either A, turn on the TV broadcast of that game, or B, turn on the radio broadcast. So I knew that, but I also wanted to confirm and kind of get all the ducks in the row and everything like that. So I was every, 3 or 4 plays, basically turned myself into like a news anchor. Hey, if you're just joining us, here's what's going on. As soon as the game was over, we did the press conference, we did player reaction. So really, for a week and a half, it was all about, Andrew Luck and how it's going to impact the team and everything. But I'll give the Colts a tremendous amount of credit because they turned the page very, very quickly. And you might remember that happened 2 weeks before the regular season started. There was no choice within the organization but to turn the page very quickly because you had meaningful games just around the corner, around the horizon. So they had no choice but to, just block it out of their mind and move on and go to the next plan and the next man up. So, yeah, wild night. Was up to like 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, if memory serves, and woke up the next day. I thought it was a dream, but it's one of those things I'll never forget. I'll never forget what I was doing and where I was and what was going through my mind the night Andrew Luck decided to retire. Anything else?
I want to thank you for being here today. And all those folks that are watching us in England and California and your relatives should be very proud of you.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Greg Silver, the host of this month. And thank Graham. Graham, I couldn't hear you. I think you may be on mute. I don't know.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Matt, again, congratulations, and we'd love for you to join us next summer if that would be possible in a more normal time frame. I do want to let you know we're going to be making a donation in your name to Teachers Treasures. It's
awesome.
An organization in Indianapolis that helps Indianapolis public schools with supplies for the year. So we'll be making that in your name and sending you a certificate. But again, really appreciate your time and wish you all the best and the Colts this coming year.
Oh, that's great. I'm incredibly I'm flattered and honored and appreciative of that. And my wife is a school teacher. She teaches second grade, so that definitely hits home. And yeah, that's huge. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Absolutely. Next week, I hope you'll join us. We've got a really interesting presentation. We're going to have a former high school classmate of mine, Raul Dubé, who is in the middle of a big news story in Washington, D.C. around the protest. And I hope you'll join us for that one. So until then, we're going to adjourn. If you want to stick around and have a social time with fellow Kiwanians, please do. I've got to jump off the call for another Zoom meeting. Matt, thanks again for a terrific presentation. Hope everybody has a great week.
Thanks, Graham. Is that Gary Gardner on there? Gary?
Yes, that's me. Greg, how are you?
Fine. How's your son doing? Is he good?
He's doing fine. He's doing fine.
I don't know what's going to happen out there. I'm not really feeling secure right now. We'll see how.
No, nor am I, Greg, but we'll just have, like everybody says, just wait and see what happens. But
I'm going to support the Bulldogs, but I'm not sure I'm going to be able to be there in person. My wife is feeling very uneasy about it. And your daughter is doing good? Yeah?
She's doing fine. Yep. Everybody's good. Everybody's healthy.
Sarah and the kids as well. And please give our regards. Yeah.
Will do. Thanks, Greg.
All the
For
best.
people that don't know, my daughter and Greg's daughter were dorm mates at University of Colorado in their freshman year. So they were roommates. So.
It was memorable. Yes. We've always been good friends since then and always together. And your son does.
That's right. Good to see you, Greg. Bye.
Good to see you, Greg. I think we're the last ones off. I'm going off. Take care, Gary. Have a safe day.